Hey everyone, welcome to this Unity 3D tutorial on how to animate your camera. Specifically, what we will be doing is taking our camera from anywhere inside our scene and we are going to zoom it in towards a focus point, like a character, um, using the vector3.move towards function provided by Unity. So it's very easy. So let's go and get started. But before we start programming, we need to go ahead and create our character and our focus point. So you can use whatever you want. You can use a cube, doesn't really matter. I'm going to use the constructor model provided by the Unity package. I believe it's the character controller package, but like I said, you can use whatever you want. So I'm just going to drop him anywhere inside my scene. Make sure he's above the ground. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so now that we have our character inside our scene, like I said, you can do this with whatever you want. In fact, let me go and create a cube so I can demonstrate that later. I'll call this cube character. You don't have to do this. You can just do it with one, but let's see how easy it is to change between focus points. So I'll be using the constructor, but later once I'm done with the coding, I'll switch over to this cube to show you how to do that. But now that we have our character here, our constructor character, we need to create its focus point. So to create the focus point, we're just going to use an empty game object. So to create an empty game object, just go to game object, create empty. Let's name it focus point. And this needs to be a child of constructor, or of your character, whatever you're using as your character. So I'm going to go ahead and move it to 0, 0, 0 to get it perfectly centered. Now I need to move the focus point empty game object to where I want the camera to end up. And I want my camera to end up so I kind of get an over the shoulder view. So I'm going to put my focus point right there. Seems to be fine. I'll probably move it back a little bit and then up. I can always readjust it later. But that's our focus point. So basically how this is going to work, we're going to take our camera right here. We're just going to zoom in. Not necessarily zoom, but rather move the camera towards this focus point. So now that we have that set up, let's go ahead and start the programming portion. So just create a script. For this tutorial, I'll be doing C#. JavaScript is really easy to do the same. If you can follow my C# script, you should be able to convert it to JavaScript real easy. But for this tutorial, I will be doing C#. So I'm going to name it animate camera. Let's go ahead and open it up. Okay, here it is. Okay, so here we have our skeleton code right here. So let's go ahead and name our function. We are going to name it move towards target. In this case, target is going to be that focus point. So public void move towards target. And our parameter is going to be the game object. So game object target. Target is our focus point. Let's go and save. So now we need some variables for this function before we get started. So move towards target. It's always a good idea to comment your code. So first thing we're going to need is a speed variable for when we move the camera. The camera has to move at a speed. So public float move speed. We'll set it to 35.0 f. Remember, we're doing a float, so we have to have that f. We also need that that focus point, that target game object. So public game object, target object. Target object right here is what we're going to be passing in to right here. We also, to test this out, you can put this function anywhere. I'm going to end up putting this script on the camera, but just to test it out, we kind of need to set up a basic Boolean control. So private bool moving towards target equals false. Now the way I'll set it up is if I press a key, I'll set moving towards target equals. I'll set that to true, and then we'll run the move towards target function. Okay, so with these three, we can go and get started with the main part of our function. So like I said, we're going to use the vector3.moveTowards function provided by Unity. What that function does, it takes two transforms and basically moves your object between those two positions, the two transformed out positions, in a straight line. So the way to do this is going to be on our camera. I haven't put it on yet, but we will eventually. We're going to say transform.position. We're going to be altering the position equals vector3.moveTowards. We're going to take this transform, which will be the transform of our camera, so transform.position. And then we want to take our target, this part right here. This is going to be this is the focus point. This is what we're going to be moving towards. So target.transform.position. Now we also need to put in the speed. That's the last parameter. So we're going to take our move speed variable right here and move speed times time.delta time. Remember, the time.delta time portion is very important. That makes it frame rate independent. So this line of code will work the same across all platforms: iPhone, Android, PC, Mac, same thing. It'll always act the same way. So we can save this and try to test it out to see how it works so far. Oh, before we can do that, we need to go inside of that Boolean control to turn on that, to start executing that function. So you can kind of control this however which way you want, but I'm just going to initiate it with a keystroke. So if input.get key down, and I'll use M, move towards. And if it's already set to true, we want to set it to false to turn it off. If it's false, we want to set it to true to turn it on. So if moving towards target, this Boolean variable right here, if this is true, then we want to say moving towards target equals false. Else moving towards target equals true. So when I press the M key, by default it's set to false. So when I press the M key the first time, it's not true, it's false. So we're going to go here and it'll set it to true. And down here I'll say if moving towards target, and here's where I'm going to call the function, this function right here. So move towards target, game object target, we're going to pass in this target object right here. And we'll set that inside the editor, we'll do that in a second, but move towards target, target object. So when I press the M key, this will be set to true, and we'll call this function every single frame. So let's go back to Unity and test this out and make sure this works so far. Okay, so first things first, let's get our camera. We need to put that animate camera script on it. So you can easily drag and drop the script onto here as well. The first thing we need to do is set the target object. This is our target object right here, focus point. I probably should have named the target object, but it doesn't really matter. So let's just drag this focus point onto our target object. And you can also see that you can change your move speed to whatever you want. I just set it to 35. If it's too fast, I'll lower it. If it's too slow, I'll raise it. So our camera's right here. So if everything works, if I did everything right, it should move straight to this position. So let's go ahead and test it out. Okay, it worked, and I got the positioning pretty good. So I kind of wanted to know where the shoulder look, and that's what I got. So you can see the camera is right there on focus point. That's how Vector3.MoveTowards works. So going back to the code, what do I need to do next? Oh, so I need to eventually turn off moving towards target. I need to eventually set this back to false, and ideally I want to set it to false whenever the camera is at our target point, that focus point. So to do that, what I will do is I will check the distance between the camera and the focus point. So to do that, we use if vector3.distance transform.position, which corresponds to the position of the camera, and the target.transform.position. This will return a value if that value is less than 0.1. Set it to something small. So if it's less than 0.1, we'll say moving towards target equals false. So that way we're not calling this function every single frame. And just to be on the safe side, we'll go ahead and set transform.position to our target.transform.position. This is kind of just a safety net to make sure it's in the position. As soon as it's less than 0.1, we just set it and turn off set moving towards target to false, and it'll stop calling the function. So, oops. Go back to Unity. So it'll do the same thing. It'll do the same thing, except this time now moving towards target is false, and it's not calling that function anymore. So one more thing. Let's say our camera is not directly behind our player. In that instance, it was directly behind our player. Let's say our camera was rotated 90 degrees. I'll tell you what, 180, so it's not even facing the player. If we were to run it, we ran our move towards target function, you'll see that the camera doesn't rotate and get back to our desired position. So what we'll do is we'll keep our same function, but we'll change it so whenever it does get to this point, we'll rotate the camera to face the proper rotation, the rotation of the focus point. So let's go back to the code. We need to add some new variables. So we're going to be using slurp. Well, actually, I believe lerp. It's either lerp or slurp. Let me check my old code, since I've done this, or I did this earlier. I'm going to be using lerp. So let's create a value for lerp. So private float lerp speed. Set to something small, 0.25f. And because it's a float, we need the f. We'll also need 2 rotations from rotation, and two rot for 2 rotation. From rotation is basically our initial rotation. 2 rot is our destination rotation. 2 rot will correspond to the focus point rotation. We also need a boolean to determine when we are in position. Once we are in position, we can start the rotating of the camera. So a private bool in position. Set that to false. So now we need to change our move towards target function a little bit. Okay, so we know we're in position when our vector3.distance function returns a value less than 0.1. So in here we'll say in position is equal to true. But we don't want to set moving towards target equals to false because we still have some more stuff to do. Once in position is equal to true, we're going to start rotating the camera. So underneath vector3.distance part, our chunk, we will say if in position. And this is where we'll start doing the rotating. So we can say transform.rotation is equal to quaternion.lerp from rotation.rotation. From rotation is a transform, that's why we have to have the dot rotation after it. So from rotation.rotation to rotation to rot.rotation time.time times lerp speed. We still need to set moving towards target to false, but let's go ahead and test this to make sure everything's working properly. But before we can do that, we have to set from rotation and to rotation. And we want to do that whenever we press the M key. So up here, what we'll do is inside the else, because this is where our moving towards target boolean is set to true. This is essentially us turning the function on. We'll say from rotation is equal to GameObject.transform. This corresponds to our camera. This is what's the script is on the camera, so that's what it references. We'll say to rotation is equal to target object. So focus point.transform. We'll say moving towards target is true. So let's go ahead and test this out to make sure everything's working properly so far. Okay, so our camera's not facing the player. So when it gets to that point, I expect it to rotate. So let's go. Okay. So that worked. But we still have to set moving towards target to false, as well as in position, because in the event that we move our camera and call this function again, those variables have to be reset before we can call the function again. So to do that, what we'll do is get the absolute value of the local Euler angles .y of our from rotation and our to rotation. So just copy what I'm about to put. If math f.absolute abs from rotation local Euler angles .y minus to rotation to rot local Euler angles .y. We'll set it to a small value. We'll say 3. So if the absolute value is less than 3, we'll say moving towards target is equal to false. We'll say moving towards target is false, and end position is equal to false. So this is us resetting our Boolean variables. And this transform.rotation, the quaternion.lerp part needs to be inside the else. Okay, so let's go over this function again. With this line right here, we'll move towards our focus point. Once the distance between the camera and the focus point is less than 0.1, we know we are in position. We'll manually set it to our focus point position as a safety net. Then we'll say that we are in position to start rotating. And we'll go down here. And if the absolute value of the local Euler angles .y, which kind of corresponds to this value right here, I believe, the local Euler angles .y from our from rotation and the local Euler angles .y of our to rotation, if the difference between those is less than 3, if the absolute value of the difference between those two is less than 3, then we know we are done rotating. So save that. Should probably manually set the rotation to our target point as well. Transform.rotation. Let me test this. I didn't test this out earlier. So transform.rotation is equal to target.transform.rotation. I think this should be fine. That's kind of like our safety. That's kind of the same idea presented here with us setting position manually. So M to turn it on, we'll rotate, and we're done. So you'll see that the rotation, the X, Y, Z, is now set to the same rotation as the focus point. So that's it. That's how to animate your camera to kind of zoom in towards your player. We can also put, even if the camera was in front of the player, it would still work. We'll rotate. And I'll show you how easy it is to change your focus points. You can do this through code, but I'm going to take that cube character I made. Remember, we need a focus point, so create empty. We'll call this focus point. We'll put it inside our cube character, so this has to be a child. It's just easier to keep track of it like that. Kind of want a over-the-shoulder view, same as I did with the constructor. And for main camera, I have, well, let me change the name of this to make it easier to differentiate. Focus point cube. On my main camera, I can just change this variable right here to focus point cube. So now it'll focus on the cube and not the constructor. And you can see the cube right here. So that's how to zoom in your camera. We'll move your camera towards your player to focus on that player. You can change the move speed to whatever you see fit. 100 is probably too fast, but 50 will work just fine. Trying to think if there's anything else I need to cover, but I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the next video.